The rain poured hard that night, heavy and cold. Hitting the old metal roofs of the human outpost, the streets were nearly empty, except for one man walking home with a small bag of groceries in his hand. His name was Jaron, a quiet man, mid-30s, who liked to live alone on the edge of the colony. He had no family, no close friends, and no reason to expect anyone would knock on his door. But that night, someone did. A soft knock, almost like a whisper, came from outside his rusty door. He paused, thinking maybe it was just the wind. Then he heard it again: knock. Knock. Jaron opened the door slowly, and what he saw made his heart twist. A woman stood there, soaked to the bone, her silver hair clinging to her alien blue skin. She held a little girl in her arms, no older than 5, shaking from the cold. The girl's eyes were glowing faintly, her lips blue, and her body trembling. The woman's voice cracked as she spoke. "Please, just one night with me. Just feed my daughter." Jaron didn't speak for a moment. Too stunned to understand, he looked at the woman, then at the child in her arms. They were clearly not from Earth, but they weren't dangerous. They were starving, desperate, and terrified. "You're offering? What?" he asked carefully. "One night," she whispered, not meeting his eyes. "I'll do anything. Just give her a warm meal." Jaron's stomach turned. Not from the offer, but from the pain behind it. This wasn't about selling herself. It was about saving the child in her arms. "No," he said, stepping aside and opening the door wider. "Come in, both of you. You don't have to do that." The woman hesitated, confused, as if no one had ever said that to her before. But when the girl gave a weak cry, she stepped in quickly. Jaron gave them towels, a blanket, and warm soup. The little girl sipped slowly, her tiny hands shaking around the spoon. The woman stayed silent, sitting on the edge of the couch, eyes scanning the windows nervously. She kept glancing toward the shadows, like she expected someone to crash through the wall any second. "What's your name?" Jaron asked softly. "Vila," she replied. "And my daughter is Leary." He nodded, offering her some soup as well, but she refused. "All for her," she said. "She hasn't eaten in days." Jaron sat down across from them, trying to understand. "Where are you from?" "You're not local," no, Vila said. Eyes low. "We escaped from the outer camps. They were using us." "Using?" he asked, confused, but she didn't explain further, only clutched her daughter tighter. Leary finished the bowl and finally fell asleep on the couch, curled up under the blanket. Only then did Vila speak again. "You shouldn't have let us in," she said quietly. "They'll track us." Jaron frowned. "Who?" "The ones who owned us," she whispered. "They have sent drones. They mark our bodies. They don't let anyone go." She rolled up her sleeve and showed him her forearm. A strange metallic pattern glowed faintly under the skin, like a living barcode. Jaron leaned forward, surprised. "What is that?" "A tag," she said. "It tells them where I am, always." He stood and moved toward his small tool bench. "I can try to block the signal," he said, "but I need to." "Know what tech it is?" Vela looked up, startled. "Why would you help me?" Jaron gave her a half smile. "Because you asked for food, not pity." She looked like she wanted to cry, but held it in as he began gathering tools. She slowly reached under the couch and pulled out a small glowing object wrapped in cloth. It wasn't food. It wasn't clothes. It was something far more dangerous. Jaron saw it and stopped in his tracks. "What is that?" he asked slowly. Vila didn't answer at first, then finally whispered. "It's the key to shutting them down." Jaron stared at her, rain still pounding outside. He knew then this wasn't just about saving a child. It was something much, much bigger, and he had just opened the door to it. The morning light slipped through the window blinds, casting long, soft lines across the floor. Jaron stirred his coffee, but his eyes were fixed on the couch, there, wrapped in the old brown blanket. The alien child Leary slept peacefully. Her tiny chest rose and fell with slow breaths. A rare moment of calm. But Vila was not calm. She stood by the window, staring through the small cracks in the curtain. Her silver-blue skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her expression was sharp, alert. She hadn't slept all night. "They'll come," she said quietly, not turning her head. Jaren set his cup down. "You said that last night, but I still don't know who they are." Vila turned slowly to face him. Her eyes filled with something heavy guilt, fear, and something else, something darker. "You think you're helping a poor mother and her daughter," she said, her voice steady now. "But it's more than that, Jaren." He crossed his arms. "Then tell me the truth." Vela looked at Leary and hesitated, then finally spoke. "We were born in a breeding lab," she said, "on the planet Cipher used for experiments, for creating a new species that could obey without question." Jaren frowned, not understanding. Vila walked over and sat down, her voice turning cold, almost robotic. "They mixed alien DNA with human code, trying to make something obedient, beautiful, and deadly. They failed with me," she said, placing a hand on her chest. "I had too much free will, but Leary?" Her eyes softened. Leary was their success. Jaren looked at the sleeping child in shock. "You mean she's not just your daughter?" "She is," Vela said firmly, "but she's also their perfect weapon." Before Jaren could speak, Leary twitched in her sleep, her hands glowing faintly blue, then without. Warning objects on the table began to vibrate. The spoon jumped, the cup slid an inch. Jaren stared. "She's doing that?" Vela nodded. "She's evolving faster than expected." A chill ran down Jaren's back. "So what now?" he asked. "They want her back to use her." Vila looked at him. "No, Jaren. They want her back to control her, or destroy her, if they can't." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "What about that thing you showed me last night, the glowing device?" Vila looked over at the small cloth bundle she had hidden again under the couch. "It's called a disruptor shard," she said. "If inserted into their system core, it shuts down the entire tracking and control network. Then why haven't you used it yet?" Vila's voice broke. "Because I'd have to go back. I escaped with my child. But to end this, I'd have to return to the place where they broke me." Jaren stared at her for a long time. She was strong, no doubt, but also broken in places he couldn't see. And yet, she carried her daughter, protected her, even offered herself to strangers just to get food. She didn't need pities. She needed a partner. "I can help," he said softly. She shook her head. "You've done enough. You gave us food and shelter. Please don't risk your life." But Jaren didn't. "Step back. You said they track you through the tag in your arm, right?" He picked up a small blade and scanner from his desk. "Let me try to disable it." Vila looked at him in silence for a moment, then nodded slowly. She stretched out her arm, and he carefully scanned the glowing pattern as he began working. Leary suddenly opened her eyes, but something was wrong. She sat up straight and whispered, "They're close." Jaren froze. "What do you mean?" Vela rushed to her side. "She can feel them. Her body reacts before they arrive." Outside, a faint humming sound began. Like an engine passing overhead, Jaren rushed to the window and peeked outside. A black drone floated above the street, scanning with a red beam they found. "US," Vila whispered, pulling Leary close. Jaren stood still, brain racing. He had no weapons, no training for this. Just a small home and 2 fugitives who somehow had become his responsibility overnight. But something inside him had already changed. He couldn't let them go, couldn't walk away. The drone paused above his house, the red beam focusing on the roof. Then a mechanical voice echoed through the street. "Subject V7 located. Preparing for retrieval." Jaren's heart pounded as he looked back at Vela and Leary. Vela held her daughter tight, whispering calming words in a language he didn't know. The child's eyes glowed bright, now too bright. Jaren grabbed the disruptor shard from under the couch, tucking it into his jacket. He didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about food or shelter or kindness anymore. This was war, and he was in it now. The silence after the drone left felt heavier than the rain that had soaked the world just hours before. Jaren sealed the windows, pulled the curtains tight, and paced across the wooden floor with clenched fists. Vela sat on the couch, holding Leary close. Her face pale, her hands trembling. No words were spoken, but everyone in the room knew things would never go back to normal. Because normal had just flown away with red scanner lights and a robotic voice, Leary blinked slowly, her eyes dimming. "Back to normal? Is it gone?" she asked in a soft whisper. Vela nodded, brushing a strand of silver hair from her daughter's forehead. "For now," she said, but they never stopped for long. Jaren finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "You said she's a weapon." Vela looked up at him, not with pride, but with pain. She was made to obey commands. She said, "Kill when told, track when ordered, feel nothing." She looked down at Leary. But something went wrong or right. Maybe she feels, she thinks. She asks questions. Leary tugged her mother's sleeve. "Did I do something bad?" Jaren knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her small shoulder. "No," he said. "You're not bad, Leary. You're just different." She stared at him with big, sad eyes. Different always gets punished. He swallowed hard, not sure what to say. Then Vela pulled something from a pouch hidden under her dress, a folded picture, creased and water-stained. She handed it to Jaren silently. He opened it, and his eyes widened. It was an old Earth military ID, badge ripped in half. On the badge was a younger version of him, clean-shaven, dressed in uniform and smiling, but the name printed on the card was not his. "That's not me," Jaren said quietly, confused. "No," Vela replied. "Atia, might you look exactly like him?" She pointed to the name Captain Elias Corin. Jaren sat back slowly. "That's my brother." Atila's voice dropped. "He was stationed on Sephora years ago. One of the only humans allowed into the research zones." Jaren's chest tightened. "He never came back." Vela nodded. "They erased him from the records, but not from me. He helped me escape once before." Jaren stared at the photo, emotions battling in his chest. Grief, confusion, anger. Then why didn't he come home? He asked, almost to himself. Vela looked away, because he died protecting someone. She didn't say who, but her silence was answer enough. Leary stood up from the couch, wobbling slightly, but smiling. "Are you my uncle then?" she asked shyly. Jaren blinked, then gave her a small smile. "I guess I am." She giggled and wrapped her arms around him. Vela watched in silence, tears filling her eyes. A strange warmth filled the room for a moment, until the power flickered once. Then twice. Then everything went black. Jaren stood quickly, grabbing a flashlight outside. There were no sounds of drones, no sirens, no searchlights, just darkness. But something about it didn't feel right. Vela stood too, reaching for her daughter. Her voice sharp now. "Hide the shard." Jaren nodded and slid it into the hollow floorboard under the table. He covered it with a rug, just as the front door knocked hard. Not a soft knock like before, but the kind that came from soldiers or hunters. 3 bangs, loud and commanding. Jaren motioned for them to stay quiet. Step to the door and look through the peephole. A tall figure in a black cloak stood. Outside, face hidden, shoulders wide, not moving. The man raised a small metal card and slid it into the scanner beside the door. Jaren's system beeped, then unlocked with a soft hiss. He hadn't given permission. The door slid open. revealing a woman-tall alien with golden markings along her cheeks. She looked past Jaren into the room, her glowing yellow eyes landing on Vela V7, she said calmly. You were hard to find. Vela stood slowly, shielding Leary behind her. What do you want, Sen? She said through clenched teeth. The woman named Sen smiled without warmth. I came to bring you home. Jaren stepped between them. She's not going anywhere. Sen raised an eyebrow. And you must be the human who's been playing house with a fugitive. Her voice dripped with mockery, but her eyes narrowed when she spotted Leary. Interesting, she said. The child survived the surge. Vela pulled something from her sleeve, a small silver needle. Come closer, and I inject this into my neck, she warned. You'll never get her then. Sen paused, calculating. You don't have the nerve, she said. I don't. Vela replied, but he does. She nodded toward Jaren. He stepped forward, holding a shock baton, one he'd grabbed from his emergency kit. Try me, he said quietly. Sen's lips curled into a grin. This isn't over, she said. Stepping back, she walked away, disappearing into the shadows without a sound. As the door shut, Jaren turned to Vela, heart racing. What was that? He asked. Vela answered with a whisper. She's the one who trained me. She knows how to break minds. Jaren looked at the scared child beside her. Then at the secret hidden under the floor. He realized then, this wasn't just a fight. To survive, it was a fight to protect what his brother once died for. And he wasn't about to lose again. The house was quiet again. But the silence was now dangerous. Jaren locked every door and window, then paced the room like a soldier preparing for war. Vela sat beside her daughter, whispering soft alien words, rocking Leary gently in her arms. But Jaren noticed her hands-tight fists, knuckles pale, ready to fight or flee at any second. She was calm on the outside, but inside, she was burning. She knew your name, Jaren said finally. Breaking the tension, she called UV7. Vela didn't look at him. That's what I was to them. She replied, not Vela. Not a mother, just a number. Jaren crouched near her, watching Leary sleep. Why didn't you run when you had the chance? He asked. When the door opened, you could have escaped. Vela looked at him now, her voice softer. Because this time, I wasn't alone. She touched Leary's cheek. Running alone is easy. But when you're protecting someone, step becomes a fight. Jaren nodded, his mind flashing with memories his brother Elias. Long gone, brave and selfless. He wondered how much of that courage lived in him now. You said they track you, Jaren said. The mark on your arm. It sends signals. Vela nodded, rolling up her sleeve again. The pattern glowed dimly, moving like it was alive under her skin. It's a living chip, bonded to my nervous system, she explained. If they scan the area again, they'll know I'm here. Jaren stood and walked to his tool bench again. I think I can block it, he said, picking up a microscanner and a pulse jammer. Vela raised an eyebrow. You're a mechanic, not a surgeon. Jaren smirked. Lucky for you, I was. Also trained in battlefield tech. My brother made sure of it. He took a deep breath, motioning for her to sit. This will hurt, he said. Vela sat down without flinching. Pain is part of life. Jaren activated the scanner, and a sharp buzzing filled the air as he worked. Leary stirred awake and crawled over, watching silently, her little fingers wrapped around her mother's hand. Her face worried. Jaren looked at her and smiled. Gently, don't worry, kiddo. Your mom's a fighter. Leary nodded slowly. She always protects me. Sparks flashed, and Vela gasped, but didn't scream. The mark flickered, then dimmed, then went completely dark. Jaren sighed in relief, wiping sweat from his forehead. I jammed the signal, he said, but only temporarily. Vela looked at her arm, then up at him. "You're not like the others." "What others?" "Other humans," she said. "They trade kindness for gain, favors for flesh. But you've done nothing but give." Jaren sat back, quiet, then whispered, "I never got the chance to save my brother. Maybe now I can save someone." Before anything more could be said, a light blinked on Jaren's old communicator. He picked it up. It was a security alert from the outer edge of the colony. "Unauthorized ship landing," the message read. Jaren turned to Vela. "That's not a search drone. It's a transport ship." Vela's eyes widened. Sen didn't come alone. Jaren grabbed a bag, quickly stuffing supplies, weapons, and a small data pad. "We have to go," he said. "We'll use the sewer tunnels under the colony." Vela stood, lifting Leary into her arms. "I've used those tunnels before. They're dirty, tight, and full of rats." Jaren smiled. "Sounds like home." They moved fast, exiting through a hidden hatch behind the fireplace. Beneath, the house was a tunnel, dark and narrow, lined with old metal beams and leaking pipes. As they walked, Leary suddenly grabbed Jaren's hand. "What is it?" he asked. "I had a dream," she said softly, "about a flower growing from fire." Vela tensed. "She's been saying things like that lately, dreams, symbols. I think she's starting to see more than she should." Jaren looked down at Leary. "What kind of flower?" She whispered, "A red one." "And it was in your pocket." Jaren froze, reached into his jacket, and pulled out the disruptor shard. It was glowing again, pulsing with light. He looked at Vela, confused. It wasn't glowing earlier. She stared at the shard, then at her daughter. "She's linked to it," she whispered, somehow. The tech responds to her, suddenly. A deep echo came from behind them, boots hitting metal, voices calling in another language. Jaren turned quickly, pulling out a small blaster. "They found the hatch," he said. "We don't have much time." Vela took a sharp turn, leading them into a side tunnel. "The reactor pipe leads to an old exit. No one uses it anymore." They ran, Leary clinging tightly to both adults as they neared the end of the tunnel. Jaren noticed something strange. The walls had marking scratches, almost like writing, symbols that glowed when Leary passed by. Vela saw them too and stopped. Breath caught in her throat. "These markings. They're ancient," she said. "Long before our time," Jaren whispered. "Then why do they react to her?" Leary stepped forward and placed her hand on the wall. It lit up bright, warm, like a sunrise trapped underground. Jaren looked at Vela, and for the first time, she didn't look afraid. She looked hopeful. The ground shook behind them. "Blaster fire." Shouting, Jaren pointed toward the end of the tunnel. "Time to run," he said, but he glanced back one last time at the glowing wall. Somehow, he knew this child wasn't just the key to stopping the enemy. She was the beginning of something new. The tunnel exit opened into the outskirts of the forest, hidden behind thick vines and rusted fencing. Jaren climbed out first, blaster ready, scanning the area with sharp eyes. "Clear," he whispered. Helping Vela and Leary out of the hole, the cold air stung their skin, but the quiet felt like a gift. For the first time in hours, no one was chasing them. Vela clutched her daughter close as they hurried into the thick woods. They didn't speak for a while, each step filled with the tension of hunted souls. But Leary's small voice eventually broke the silence. "Will we have a home again?" she asked, her big eyes searching Jaren's face. He looked down at her, heart twisting. "We'll make one," he said. "Somewhere they can't find us." Vela's face turned to him, surprised by the word "we." She had run alone for so long. It felt strange to share her escape with someone who didn't owe her anything. "Why are you still with us?" she asked as they walked. "You could have left. You could have turned us in, collected credits." Jaren kept walking, but his voice was calm. "Because once, someone protected my brother." They reached a small shack deep in the forest. Broken but still standing, It was an old emergency shelter from the early days of the colony. Jaren kicked open the warped door, cleared the debris, and helped Vela set Leary down on a cot. It wasn't much, but it was dry, quiet, and safe for now. Leary fell asleep quickly, exhausted from fear and power surges her young body couldn't control. Jaren sat by the door, listening for movement. In the forest, Vela sat across from him, wrapping her arms around herself. "I used to dream of having a family," she said quietly, "but I was made to be used, not loved." Jaren looked at her carefully. "That's not true. You protect your daughter. You sacrifice for her. You're more human than most people I know." Vela shook her head slowly. "You say that now, but you haven't seen what I've done to survive." Jaren stood, walked over, and crouched beside her. "You think I haven't done things I regret?" he whispered. "My brother died because of a decision I made. I told him to stay back, and he went ahead instead." His voice cracked slightly. "I wasn't there when he needed me, but I can be here now." Vela didn't speak, but something in her eyes softened then. The floor under Leary's cot began to gloss off blue symbols rising from the ground. Jaren jumped to his feet. "Not again." But Vela shook her head. "It's not danger. It's a reaction." They pulled back the cot and revealed a strange pattern beneath, stitched into the floor like ancient writing. Jaren recognized the shapes. These matched the ones from the tunnel. Vela knelt down and placed her hand on the glowing marks. "They're drawn to Leary's energy," she whispered. "She's waking something up. Something buried long ago." Suddenly, Leary sat up, eyes glowing, her voice deep and distant. "Father's mark. Mother's code. Seed of both worlds," she said. Then her body went limp again. Jaren rushed to her side, holding her close. "Leary, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open, soft and normal now. "I'm tired," she whispered, "but I feel warm when I'm with you." Jaren smiled gently, brushing hair from her face. "We're not leaving you." Vela stared at her daughter in shock. She's never spoken like that before. The symbols on the floor dimmed, but didn't vanish. Jaren stood, thinking hard. What if she's not just some experiment? What if she's something chosen? Vela looked at him, puzzled. "Chosen by who?" "I don't know," he replied, "but maybe not all ancient powers are gone." The next morning, Jaren went outside to gather supplies from a cache he had buried years ago. While digging, he uncovered something he hadn't seen before. A piece of metal buried deep, covered in moss and soil, but glowing faintly like the shard. He pulled it free and turned it over. It was an insignia, shaped like a wing wrapped around a star. His eyes widened. "This is from the Alliance. But it's not current." When he returned to the shack, Vela took one look and gasped. "That's the mark of the lost wing," she said. "The ancient rebel group that vanished before my birth. They believed in joining species, not controlling them." Jaren whispered. "Maybe this isn't just our fight. Maybe this is destiny." That night, as they sat together by the small fire in the center of the shack, Leary rested peacefully. Jaren leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You know," he said, "this doesn't feel like hiding anymore." Vela looked at him curiously. "Then what does it feel like?" He smiled faintly. "Like family." Vela didn't reply, but she moved closer, just a little, and for the first time since her escape, she allowed herself to believe. Maybe she wasn't just running from something. Maybe she was running towards something new. The stars were cold and quiet as the stolen ship broke through the atmosphere. Jaren gripped the controls tightly, knuckles pale, eyes focused on the black horizon beside him. Vela tapped into the old system's navigation, trying to reroute their path. Leary sat strapped in behind them, her small face glowing softly in the cabin's dim blue light. They were no longer running on foot now. They were fugitives flying through space. "How did you even get this ship to fly?" Vila asked, shaking her head. Jaren glanced sideways. I fixed it up years ago. In case I ever needed to disappear. He paused, then added, didn't expect to take passengers. Vela smirked slightly. Didn't expect to be cargo, eh? Sudden beep sounded from the console in alert. Tracker pinged, Jaren said sharply. Someone's tailing us. He brought up the rearview monitor, and there it was, sleek. Black pursuit ship, fast, silent, and deadly. Vila's eyes narrowed. Sen, she whispered. Jaren pushed the throttle forward, engines whining. Louder, we can't outrun her in a straight path, he said. This ship's old she burn us out in a chase. Vila scanned the star map, her fingers moving quickly. There's an asteroid belt up ahead, dense and unstable. Perfect, Jaren grinned. Let's lose her in the chaos. They dove into the belt. Dodging rocks the size of small cities, Jaren twisted the ship between spinning debris. Engines roaring. Vila held Lyri close, shielding her from the jarring turns. Sen's ship followed, graceful and terrifying, weaving through space like a predator chasing prey. She's still on us. Jaren said through clenched teeth. She's not even sweating. Suddenly, a sharp sound clang shook the hull. They hit us, Vila shouted. They fired a tracker bolt. Jaren looked at the damage reading. If we don't shake it off, they'll find us no matter where we. Landvila reached under the console and pulled out the disruptor shard. It's reacting again, she said, pulsing. Like it knows we need it. Lyri stood up from her seat, staring at the shard, her voice soft but firm. I can guide it, she said. It listens to me. Jaren and Vila exchanged a stunned look. You've never used it before, Vila said. It could hurt you. Lyri stepped forward bravely. But if we don't stop them, they'll never stop chasing us. She placed her hands around the shard, and light exploded across the cabin blue, red, gold. The console screen flickered, then showed a signal disruption wave spreading outward. The tracker ping vanished. She blocked the signal. Jaren whispered. She actually did it. But the moment wasn't safe for long. Sen's ship fired again. This time, a real missile. Jaren yanked the ship sideways just in time. The blast shaking them hard. We need to land, he said. Anywhere now. Vila pointed to a small moon on the map, uninhabited, mostly ice, but it'll hide our heat signature. Done, Jaren said. Diving toward it, they crash-landed hard. Snow and ice sprang across the barren surface. The ship skidded across the frozen ground before finally coming to a stop near a rocky hill. Smoke rose from the engine, and death. Lights flickered in the cabin. Everyone okay? Jaren called out. I'm fine, Vela said, rubbing her head. I think I'd bumped my elbow. Lyri added. But it's okay. Jaren stood, looking out the cracked window. I don't. See her ship? Did we lose her? Vila stepped beside him, breathing heavily. Maybe. Or maybe she's just waiting for us to come out. They decided to move quickly, gathering supplies and sealing the ship's hatch. Outside, the snow was thick, and the wind howled like a living thing. But for now, there was peace. Inside a small cave near the wreck, they lit a fire and wrapped Lyri in heated cloth. Jaren sat with his back to the wall, holding the disruptor shard in his hand. Watching it flicker in the firelight, you know, Vela said quietly, most men would have left us behind. Jaren looked at her, tired but steady. Most men don't have brothers who gave their lives for people like you. She was silent for a moment, then whispered, he loved me. Once Jaren's eyes widened. You and Elias. She nodded slowly. It was brief, forbidden. But real. He stared into the fire, realizing that maybe this wasn't just a mission. It was personal, deeply connected to everything he lost. And maybe, just maybe, it was a chance to make it right. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the Kaviri, stood again, her body glowing faintly. She walked to the wall and pressed her hand to the frozen rock. The wall cracked, then opened, revealing a hidden staircase beneath. "What is this?" Jaren asked in shock. Leary smiled faintly. "It was waiting for us." Vila stared in awe. "This planet. It's not dead." Jaren stood, gripping his blaster. "Then let's see what it wants to show us." Because what started as a simple escape was no longer a chase. It was a calling, and something ancient was watching. The staircase beneath. The icy cave spiraled downward into glowing crystal walls. Jaren held a flashlight, but it wasn't needed. Every step lit up under Leary's bare feet. The child walked calmly, as if she had been here before. Vela followed close behind, holding her daughter's hand, eyes wide with wonder, and Jaren blaster ready. Felt the hairs on his neck stand up. This wasn't just a cavit, was something built, ancient, and very much alive. They stepped into a vast chamber, shaped like a dome. Pillars made of light rose from the ground and touched the ceiling. In the center stood a strange device, like a throne and machine combined. It pulsed with the same energy as the shard in. Jaren's hand, "It matches," he said softly. "Same power signature." Leary looked up at her mother. "This is where they made the first ones," Vila whispered. "How do you know that?" The child smiled gently. "Because I'm one of them." Jaren's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Leary walked slowly toward the machine, placing her hand on its center. "I was born to be used, but something changed. Someone changed." Me, the throne came to life, rising into the air, light swirling around her. "Her DNA is unlocking the command system," Vila said, stunned. "She's not just a hybrid, she's the interface." The ground beneath them trembled slightly. Not from threat, but from awakening. Vila turned to Jaren, voice shaking. "This place is part of the original seed network. The alliance built before the war. They tried to unite species, not control them. But when the project was shut down, they buried the truth and turned us into tools." Jaren stared at the child surrounded by light. His voice cracked. "She's the one meant to finish what they started." The lights dimmed slightly, and Leary floated back to the ground, eyes glowing softly. "They know I'm awake now," she whispered. "The enemy? The creators. They'll come," Vela knelt beside her. "Then we run again." But Jaren shook his head. "No. This time we don't run." He looked at Vela, steady and sure. "We protect this place. We protect her, and we make our stand here." Vela touched his hand. Surprised by his strength, "You sound like your brother," she said. Jaren smiled. "He gave his life for something bigger. Maybe this is what he saw in you." Suddenly, the wall behind them shimmered, projecting a hologram of the galaxy. Lines of light stretched across systems, showing control points, weapons, strongholds. And in the center, one blinking symbol, a signal beacon. "If we activate this," Jaren said, "we can broadcast the truth to every free colony. Show them what the research facilities are hiding." Vila hesitated, "But they'll trace it. And they'll come." Jaren looked at her, then at Leary, then let them. He reached out and placed the shard into the console. A deep hum filled the room, and then silence. Light burst from the dome's top, shooting through the ice and sky into orbit. Across distant planets, across dark systems, across every hidden rebel base, a message was heard, a voice not of war, but of hope. The voice of a child saying, "I am not a weapon. I am life." Hours later, as they sat outside the cave entrance under a rising sun, Leary rested peacefully between them, wrapped in warmth and safety. Vila looked at Jaren with tired eyes. "You gave us more than food," she said softly. "You gave us a reason to stop running." Jaren smiled faintly. "You asked for just one night, but I was never going to let you go back out there alone." Vela looked at him, quiet for a moment, then leaned against his shoulder. Then let's stop surviving, she whispered. Let's start living. Jaren nodded. Staring into the light sky, the war wasn't over. But for the first time, there was a path forward, not just for them, but for others like them lost. Hunted, forgotten, they weren't fugitives anymore. They were family, and this time, they were home.